Everyone mocked human for taking an ugly alien wife until the night she revealed her true body. They mocked him the moment he stepped into the colony's plaza, a decorated human commander, a war veteran, now wasting his dignity on a shadow-wrapped alien girl no one dared to claim. The night skies of Vera 9 were nothing like Earth's. Here, stars didn't twinkle softly. They burned sharp, fractured through bands of violet haze drifting across the heavens. Every evening, the colonists gathered near the plasma lanterns in the plaza, trading news, complaints, and rumors. On this evening, their voices rose louder than usual, because Commander Rylan Voss had done the unthinkable. He had been seen walking beside her, the alien, the exile, whispers in the colony. By the stars, look at him. A war hero choosing that creature. What madness is this? She hides her face for a reason. They say even her own people cast her out. The gossip spread through the crowd like static electricity before a storm. Ryland ignored them, as he always did. He stood tall, broad-shouldered, his old combat armor stripped of its insignias, worn smooth from campaigns across the frontier. Scars crossed his knuckles and jawline, but his dark eyes remained steady, unreadable. Beside him walked a figure draped in layered veils of dark fabric. Her movements were precise, fluid, carrying a grace that clashed with the image of weakness the colonists mocked. A faint shimmer escaped the edge of her mask whenever the plaza lanterns caught it. Her name was Serenia. Few dared speak it aloud. The outcast. Serenia was unlike the other natives of Vera 9. Her people, the Thalirians, were famed for their striking crystalline skin, translucent like living gemstones, and their gift for empathic resonance. But Serenia's skin was muted, her crystalline patterns clouded like frost on glass. Her people whispered she was flawed at birth. Exiled, she wandered near human colonies, surviving in silence. For months, she had been seen only at the colony's edges, slipping through shadows, leaving medicine near sickbeds, vanishing before dawn. Some said she haunted the place. Others swore she lured men with alien sorcery. Children sang cruel rhymes about the masked ghost. Yet Rylan had watched more carefully. He'd seen her carry an injured miner out of the irradiated caverns when others ran. He'd seen her tending crops that weren't hers, repairing collapsed shelters without ever asking for thanks. He'd even seen her stand, trembling but unbroken, when drunken soldiers hurled rocks at her veiled figure. An exile, an outcast, but never weak. The human commander, Rylan Voss, had fought too many wars to believe in surface truths. Earth's warlords had called him a hero, yet he knew the truth of battle. There were no heroes, only survivors. He had survived long enough to lose his entire battalion, long enough to realize medals meant nothing once the shooting stopped. When he was stationed on Vera 9, the colony elders expected him to become their enforcer. Instead, he became their judge, quiet, patient, merciless when cruelty crossed his path. He carried the look of a man who had walked too long with ghosts, who measured life not in victories, but in the weight of what was worth protecting. That was why he noticed Serenia when no one else did. Hook, the impossible proposal. On the 15th cycle of the harvest moon, Rylan Voss did what no human, no alien in the colony expected. He walked through the crowded plaza, every gaze following, and stopped before Serenia's veiled figure as she gathered supplies from the trade stalls. The crowd hushed. Then, with the same voice that had once commanded war fleets, he said, "Serenia of the Thalirians, I ask you to bond with me. Not as exile, not as outcast, but as partner." The plaza erupted. Has he gone mad? He chooses her, a human commander, binding himself to an alien disgrace? Even the traitors laughed openly, their voices sharp as glass. Serenia froze, her veil trembling in her hands. For a moment, Rylan thought she might flee into the shadows as she always did, but she didn't. Instead, she turned her masked face toward him. Her voice was low, fragile, carrying the weight of years spent in silence. "If you knew what I truly was, You would not protect me. Behind the mask, that night, away from the colony's jeers, Rylan found her again. She waited at the edge of the canyon, where bioluminescent vines clung to stone and strange insects hummed like broken violins. "Why me?" she asked without turning. "Why do you risk your honor, your command, for one who is mocked by all?" Rylan stood beside her, arms folded. The wind stirred dust between them. "I've lived long enough to see true strength. It is not in the ones cheered, Serenia. It is in the ones who endure mockery, who act without applause." Her mask tilted toward him. Beneath it, green fire flickered faintly in her eyes, or so he imagined. "They will hate you for this bond. Let them. They will call you mad. They already do." She was silent for a long time, until the stars seemed to lean closer to listen. Finally, she whispered, "You don't know what my people tried to bury. You don't know what sleeps beneath this mask." The colony reacts. By dawn, the entire colony knew of Rylan's words. They called it a farce, a scandal. The saloons echoed with drunken laughter. Traders shook their heads with mock pity. Some even placed wagers on how long before the human commander abandoned his alien ghost. Yet whispers grew darker too. If she bonds with him, perhaps she means to infiltrate us. She'll curse him, like her kind did in the war. She'll drain his strength. You'll see. Mockery turned to hostility. Men spat when Serenia passed. Women turned their children away from her shadow. Only Rylan stood unmoved, patrolling the colony as if nothing had changed. The night of fire. 3 nights later, fire tore through the colony's fuel depot. The crowd screamed, water cannons failing to contain the blaze. Panic spread like poison. And it was then that Serenia appeared. She moved into the flames without hesitation. Her veil caught embers, her mask glowed orange in the heat. She raised her hands, and for a breathless moment, the fire bent around her as if the inferno itself recognized her. She dragged 3 colonists free before the depot walls collapsed. Her arms blistered, her veil scorched. But she stood between the flames and the crowd until the last survivor crawled to safety. When dawn came, the depot was gone, but so were the lives that might have been lost. The colonists whispered in disbelief. "She saved us." "No, it must have been him. Voss ordered it. She walked into fire. I saw it with my own eyes." Rylan said nothing. He only wrapped his cloak around Serenia's trembling shoulders as the smoke curled toward the violet sky. Silent understanding. Later, in the quiet of the mountainside outpost, he asked her, "You could have died." Her masked face turned toward him, her voice thin but steady. "You do not understand. That fire was nothing compared to the blaze inside me. One day, Commander, you will see what I really am, and then you will wish you had never spoken those words in the plaza." Rylan met her gaze without flinching. "I've faced warlords, machines, beasts bred for slaughter. Do you know the only thing I regret?" She shook her head, never choosing the one thing worth protecting before the battlefield took it away. Her silence was long, but when she spoke, it was softer than he'd ever heard. "Then protect me until the day you cannot." Closing beat of Section 1. The colony still laughed, still gossiped, but in the shadow of Veronine's mountains, under alien skies that burned violet and silver, a bond had been spoken into existence, a bond everyone mocked, but none understood. For behind Serenia's mask lay a secret not even Rylan Voss had begun to fathom. And when it was revealed, the colony would learn that the ugly exile they despised might be the only shield standing between them and annihilation. The colony was never silent. Even at night, when the twin moons crossed and bled pale light across the desert ridges, the air hummed with machinery, with whispers, with suspicion. And yet in the aftermath of Rylan Voss's impossible words, a new kind of sound haunted the corridors and plazas of Veronine. Laughter. Cruel, disbelieving, endless laughter. They laughed at the soldier who had once commanded a fleet. They laughed at the exile who had never been seen without her mask. They laughed because it was safer than believing the impossible, that a human could look at an alien outcast and see something worth binding himself to. Rylan walked through it like a man wading through smoke. He heard the words hurled behind his back, the muttered curses, the spittle that stained the dirt after he passed. He ignored it all, but Serenia could not. She carried their mockery like arrows driven into her skin. Every whisper reached her, sharper because it was not new. It was the same cruelty she had endured since the day her own people had abandoned her at the colony's edge. Only now it was louder, emboldened, because the human commander had dragged her into the light. They called her mask-born, shard-face, the ghost bride. Even the children sang rhymes when she passed. But Serenia never answered. Her silence was her shield, until the night Rylan found her again. The canyon was cold, winds biting against the ridges. She sat on a ledge with her knees drawn tight, the fabric of her veil flickering faintly in the starlight. When Rylan approached, she did not turn. "You shouldn't have said it," she whispered. "You think I regret it?" "I know you don't. That is the problem." She shifted, her voice breaking. "They will use it to destroy you. A commander bonded to a failed Tellurian? They will strip your command, your respect, your place. You'll become like me." Rylan crouched beside her, the light from the moons cutting sharp lines across his scarred face. "Then I will be exactly where I should be." Her masked gaze lifted, as if searching for deceit, but there was none. She had learned to read lies. She had survived by reading them. But Rylan Voss was steady stone. "You don't know what you're offering," she murmured. "I know enough. You've lived unseen too long. That ends now." Silence stretched, broken only by the wind. Then Serenia turned away, clutching the edges of her veil, as if it might keep her whole. "Bonding with me isn't honor. It isn't alliance, it's exile." "Then exile is the only place worth living?" She trembled, and for the first time in years she felt something warm pierce through the frost inside her chest. Hope was dangerous, she reminded herself. It killed slower than poison, but always just as certain. The following dawn, when Rylan stood in the plaza and declared again his intent before the colony elders, the laughter grew into fury. The elders demanded reason. Why throw away human honor for this alien disgrace? Rylan offered none, only his calm voice echoing across the chamber. "Because I see her, and that is enough." The verdict came quickly. He was permitted his choice, but stripped of title. No longer commander, no longer the shield of the colony. To choose the exile was to walk into exile himself. The people celebrated his downfall as if it were a festival. They drank, they spat, they sang songs mocking the human and his ghost bride. They believed this would end it, that without authority, without command, Rylan would wither. But Rylan Voss had never lived for their approval, and Serenia, despite her trembling silence, discovered a strange defiance waking within her. When they walked through the colony streets together, the insults rained like acid. Yet Rylan's stride never slowed, and when Serenia faltered, he would glance once, wordless, until she remembered the strength in his gaze and stepped forward again. It was during those days that Rylan saw what none of them would admit. Beneath her mask, beneath her exile, Serenia was not merely surviving. She was fighting, quietly, endlessly. One evening, as storms gathered at the horizon and violet lightning carved the sky, he followed her beyond the colony gates. She thought herself unseen, but he tracked her steps through the dust, past the broken irrigation fields, to a hidden shelter carved into stone. There, by the glow of alien fungi, she knelt beside a child, a miner's boy, lungs scarred by chemical fires. The colonists had called him hopeless, but Serenia pressed her hands against his chest, whispering in a tongue older than the colony itself. And the boy's breathing eased. Not healed, not fully, but eased. When she rose, her body shook with exhaustion, light flickering beneath the cracks of her crystalline skin. Rylan stepped from the shadows then, and she turned sharply, her veil half torn, green fire burning faintly from her eyes. "You shouldn't be here," she said, almost a plea. "You've been saving them," Rylan answered. "The same people who spit at you, the same ones who would see you gone. They don't know. They can't know. If they learn, they'll mock you." Rylan's voice cut like iron. "They already do. And yet you heal them. Why?" Her silence was a wait until she whispered, "Because I remember what it was to be left with no one." For the first time, she did not turn away when he stepped closer. His hand rose not to tear away her veil, but to rest gently above her trembling fingers. "Then let me stand with you, not as commander, not as savior, just as a man who refuses to see you vanish." She wanted to recoil. She wanted to believe it was another cruel jest, but his hand was steady, his presence unwavering. And in that fragile silence, something inside her shifted. The bond he offered was more dangerous than fire, but it was also the first thing in years that did not feel like chains. By the time the storm broke across the desert and the colony hid from the thunder, Serenia had given her answer. Not aloud, not with words, but with the way she let her mask slip, just enough for Rylan to see the glow beneath. Not beauty, not perfection, but truth, and he did not flinch. When the colony awoke the next morning, the news had already spread. The human had been seen leaving the exile's shelter. He had not denied it. Instead, he told the elders again, "She has accepted." Mockery rose like a flood. The laughter was sharper, the hatred deeper. But it was no longer only laughter. Fear crept in, whispers of curses, of alien sorcery, of dangers too great to be ignored. Some called for her exile beyond the canyon, others for her death. Yet the decision was made, the bond was declared, and in the heart of the colony, where gossip turned to venom, a seed of dread took root, because deep down, even those who laughed remembered the fire at the depot, the way flames had bent around her shape, and they wondered what else might lie beneath the mask of the girl they had called ugly. That night, as Rylan and Serenia stood together at the canyon ridge, watching lightning split the mountains, he spoke only once. "They will try to break us. They already have." "And what if they succeed?" Serenia asked softly. Rylan's gaze did not leave the storm. "Then they will learn what it means to fight a man with nothing left to lose, and a woman who was never theirs to claim." For the first time since her exile, Serenia felt something bloom inside her that was not fear. It was fragile, dangerous, but undeniable. Hope. And she feared it more than any storm. The night began in silence, the kind of silence that sits heavy before a storm, when even the desert beasts crawl into their burrows and the winds hold their breath. Rylan Voss felt it first, standing on the watchtower outside the colony walls. A soldier learns to listen not with ears, but with skin, with the weight of air, with the tremor in his bones. Something was coming. Below him, the colony's lanterns flickered against the dark, throwing faint gold across the steel barricades. Families huddled inside their modules, whispering about harvest shortages, about gossip, about the human who had disgraced himself with an alien bride. None of them knew the storm already walking toward them on armored feet. It began with a single flare, green fire splitting the horizon. Then came the sound, the heavy thrumming of engines, layered with the shrill cries of creatures not bred on this world. The skyborn marauders, raiders who carved their way through the frontier, leaving only ruins and ash. Rylan's hand went to the rifle slung across his back, but he already knew what waited. The colony's walls were weak, its guns outdated. Against the marauders, they would fall within hours. He shouted the alarm. Sirens wailed. The colonists rushed into the streets, panic a living thing. Doors slammed, mothers clutched children, traders abandoned their goods. And still the sound grew closer, heavier, until shadows broke the horizon. Raider skiffs, armored beasts chained to their hulls, banners torn from conquered worlds, snapping in the wind. At the edge of the crowd, Serenia stood motionless. The veil hid her expression, but Ryland saw her hands clench as if fighting something inside. "They're here for blood," Ryland said, descending the tower. "They're here for fear," she answered quietly. Her voice was steady, but he saw the tremor in her frame. The elders shouted orders, useless and frantic. Men scrambled for rifles, half-trained and terrified. The colony's defense grid flickered once, twice, then collapsed entirely with the first volley of plasma fire from the skiffs. The barricades split open, steel melting into slag. The raiders poured through, armored giants with blades of light, their laughter cruel and endless. The colony broke. Ryland moved like a man born to battle. His rifle roared, cutting down the first wave. His commands cracked across the square, pulling frightened men into lines, dragging women and children into cover. He fought like the commander he had once been, his body moving through fire with cold precision. But there were too many. For every raider that fell, 3 more pressed forward. A beast broke through the barricade, hide armored like obsidian, eyes glowing red. It charged toward the refugees. Ryland spun, too far to intercept, and then Serenia moved. He stepped into its path, small and veiled, hands trembling. The raider beast reared, claws rising to tear her in half. The colonist screamed, but before the strike fell, a light flared beneath her veil. It began in her chest, a faint pulse like the heartbeat of a star. It spread through the cracks of her crystalline skin, blazing green and silver. The mask glowed, then cracked, then split entirely as the energy surged free. Serenia raised her hands. The beast halted mid-charge, as if slammed by an invisible wall. Its claws scraped against nothing, sparks flying. Then it roared, collapsing to the ground, pinned beneath a force no one could see, only feel. A weight pressing against the air itself. The crowd went silent. Serenia's voice rang across the square, low and resonant, carrying power that had slept too long. "You will not take them." Her veil burned away in the heat of her own energy. For the first time, the colony saw her face. Not flawed, not ugly, but radiant with a light that was more than beauty, more than flesh. Her crystalline skin shimmered like fractured starlight, her eyes burning with the storm of a dying sun. The marauders hesitated, and in that breath, Ryland moved beside her. His rifle cut down 2 who dared advance. His voice was steady, unshaken. "With me, Serenia." Together they stood, the exile and the fallen commander. The colonists watched in disbelief as the pair fought as if they had trained all their lives for this very night. Serenia raised walls of light, bending plasma fire aside, shielding children as they fled. Ryland cut down attackers with ruthless precision, his commands turning panic into resistance. Where one faltered, the other filled the space. Where one bled, the other shielded. But the marauders were not easily broken. Their leader stepped forward, a giant clad in black armor, his voice amplified through a helm carved with the skulls of conquered foes. "Vos!" he roared, pointing a blade of burning steel. "I know your name. I know your shame. You fight beside filth, and for that you will watch them burn." Ryland did not answer. He only tightened his grip on the rifle, his eyes cold. Serenia stepped forward instead, her voice a storm. "You will not have them, not while I breathe." The leader laughed, raising his blade. The duel was inevitable. Ryland moved to intercept, but Serenia caught his arm. He felt the heat of her energy searing through his armor. Her voice dropped, meant only for him. "Do not take this from me. This is what they feared when they cast me out. This is what I am." Ryland's jaw clenched. He had never feared for his own life. But hers? That was different. Yet when he met her burning gaze, he saw not weakness, but a strength that demanded to stand. He nodded once. Serenia faced the raider leader. The air shimmered around her, heat rippling from her skin. He swung his blade, a strike that would have cleaved stone. She caught it with her bare hands. The crowd gasped as a light exploded, sparks showering across the square. Serenia did not falter. She pushed forward, step by step, until the leader staggered. With a cry that split the sky, she unleashed the full force of her energy. The blades shattered. The leader fell to his knees. The marauders, stunned, faltered. Their laughter died. Fear crept into their eyes. For the first time, they saw not an exile, but a force greater than steel. Ryland pressed the advantage, rallying the colonists. Now! Drive them back! The square erupted. Colonists who had once mocked now fought, emboldened by the sight of the woman they had scorned standing unbroken. Plasma fire lit the night. Blades clashed, screams rose, and through it all, Serenia burned like a star. By dawn, the marauders fled. Their skiffs vanished beyond the ridges, leaving wreckage and silence in their wake. The colony stood broken but alive. Fires smoldered, walls lay shattered, bodies lined the square. But they lived, and they lived because of her. Serenia collapsed to her knees, the light fading from her skin. Her body trembled with exhaustion, her breaths ragged. Ryland caught her before she fell, lowering her gently to the ground. "You're safe," he whispered. Her eyes fluttered open, the glow dim but steady. "You see me now." "I always did." The colonists gathered, silent, stunned. For the first time, their whispers carried not laughter, not mockery, but awe. They had called her ugly. They had called her ghost. But this night, they had seen the truth. Serenia was fire. And Ryland Voss was the only man who had ever dared step into it without fear. The fires had died, but the smoke lingered for days. Every step through the colony carried the smell of ash, of blood, of fear half buried but not forgotten. Walls were cracked, markets ruined, and families dug shallow graves beyond the ridges. The skyborn marauders had left scars that would never fade. And yet amid the ruins, one truth could not be denied. They had survived because of her. Serenia, the same exile they had mocked, the same masked ghost they had spat at, the same ugly alien whose very presence once stained their pride. She had burned with power none of them could deny, standing against the marauders when even their soldiers faltered. The whispers had changed, laughter had died, but awe was a dangerous thing. It festered into fear. She's too powerful. She bent fire itself. Did you see her eyes? What if she turns on us next? And so the colony elders gathered in the council chamber, voices sharp as knives. She is not one of us. She saved us. She shamed us. If we accept her, we admit we were wrong. He bound the commander. Perhaps it is he who is cursed. The debate raged until dawn, but the decision was forced upon them. Ryland and Serenia had already chosen. They would bond before both species, before the colony itself. Not in secret shadows, not in whispered vows, but in open defiance of those who doubted. The announcement struck the colony like thunder. Some spat openly, others trembled with unease. A few, very few, whispered words of admiration, but none could stop it. The night of the bonding arrived beneath skies heavy with violet clouds. The square was cleared of debris, plasma lanterns lit until the air shimmered with unnatural fire. Humans stood on one side, uneasy and rigid. A handful of Thalarians from distant enclaves stood on the other, their crystalline skin glowing faintly beneath ceremonial robes. None would admit it aloud, but they had come only to see whether the exile would finally fail. Ryland walked first, clad not in his combat armor, but in a simple tunic of dark fabric. No rank, no insignias. Just a man stripped of all but his will. He bore no weapons save for the scars that marked him. The colonists murmured at the sight. The commander they once hailed reduced to this. Yet he walked without hesitation, his eyes never leaving the altar. Then Serenia appeared. She wore no veil. For the first time, her face was bare before them all. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Not because she was beautiful in the way they expected. Her crystalline patterns were fractured, glowing unevenly, her features sharp and alien, her eyes burning too bright to meet for long. She was not the polished gemstone of Thalarian pride. She was something else, something raw, unbroken, terrifying in her truth. And yet as she stepped into the lantern light, she carried herself like a queen. The Thalarians shifted uneasily. The colonists fell silent. Ryland felt every gaze, every judgment, but none of it mattered. He extended his hand. Serenia paused, then placed her trembling fingers in his. The ritual began. A Thalarian elder stepped forward, voice trembling with the ancient words of resonance. Two souls divided by blood, joined by choice. Speak your vow. Ryland's voice carried like steel across the square. I vow not to protect you because you are weak, but because you are strong. I vow not to claim you, but to stand beside you. Until my last breath, I choose you. The elder turned. Exile of the Thalarians, speak your vow. Serenia's voice was quiet, but it cut through the crowd like a blade. I vow not to hide from you what I am. I vow not to fear your gaze, nor the fire it kindles. Until my last light fades, I choose you. The elder raised trembling hands. Then the bond is sealed. But in that moment, as the final words echoed, Serenia's body shuddered. Light spilled from the cracks of her skin, brighter than before, brighter than the fire she had wielded against the marauders. The lanterns dimmed in comparison. The colonists stepped back, fear rising. She's burning. She'll destroy us all. But Ryland did not move. He held her hands tighter, steady, unyielding. Serenia, look at me. Her eyes blazed, green fire consuming them. This is why they cast me out, she whispered. Not because I was flawed, because I was too much. They feared what I would become. Then become it. Her light burst like a star, searing across the square. For a breathless eternity, every soul felt the weight of her power pressing against their bones. Plasma lanterns shattered. Stones cracked. The very air trembled. And then, as quickly as it came, it softened, settling into a steady glow that wrapped around them both like a cloak. When the light faded, Serenia stood radiant, not hidden, not broken. Her crystalline skin shimmered with veins of living fire, her presence filling the square with awe and terror. The colonists fell silent. None dared mock now. None dared speak. Ryland turned, his voice calm but cutting. You called her ugly. You called her ghost. Tonight you see the truth. She is more than exile, more than outcast. She is the shield that saved you, the fire that will not be quenched. And she is mine. Not because you accept it, but because we chose it. The words echoed across the ruins. For the first time, no laughter followed. The Thalarians bowed their heads, unable to meet Serenia's gaze. The colonists stared, shaken to their core. And yet in the shadows, whispers of envy stirred. Fear remained. Always fear. But Ryland and Serenia did not stay to hear it. Hand in hand, they left the square, leaving the murmurs behind. The bond was sealed, not by their approval, but by their defiance. Later, in the quiet of the mountain ridge, they stood beneath the stars. The glow from her skin lit the rocks around them, painting the night in colors not meant for human eyes. Ryland reached to brush a strand of crystalline hair from her face. You were never what they said, and you were never what you believed yourself to be, she whispered back. He smiled faintly. Then perhaps we are both something else entirely. She leaned against him, for once without trembling. The fire inside her no longer felt like a curse, not when he looked at her as though it was the most natural thing in the universe. But in the distance beyond the ridges, smoke rose once more. The skyborn marauders were not finished. The bond had been sealed in fire and shadow, but the true test had yet to come. For now, though, under alien skies and ancient stars, they stood as one. And nothing in the colony, in the empire, or in the marauder fleets could unmake what they had chosen. The peace lasted only 6 nights. On the 7th, the sky burned. Twin moons vanished behind smoke as the sky-born marauders returned in numbers far greater than before. The horizon split with fire, their skiffs blotting out the stars, engines howling like beasts of war. The colony's alarms shrieked again, but this time there was no mockery, no disbelief. Every soul knew the truth. They were coming to erase what had defied them. Ryland stood at the gates, rifles slung across his back, the weight of inevitability pressing against his chest. Serenia stood beside him, her skin glowing faintly, fire simmering just beneath. She was calm, though her hands trembled at her sides. "They won't stop," he said quietly. "Not until they break us." "They won't," she answered. "Not if we break them first." The colonists gathered behind them, torn between terror and a fragile spark of faith. Many still feared her, but none could deny what they had seen. Without her, they would have died. Without her, they would die tonight. The first barrage struck the walls. Steel melted. Sand turned to glass. Raiders poured through, a tide of armored figures wielding plasma blades. Screams tore through the colony, but this time the people did not scatter. They looked to Ryland. They looked to Serenia. And together they answered. Ryland led the charge, rifle roaring, every shot precise, every movement sharpened by years of war. His commands cut through the chaos, turning panic into discipline. He moved like a man who had nothing left to prove, only something left to protect. Serenia unleashed her fire, not the hesitant sparks of before, but the full blaze of what had been buried inside her since birth. Light erupted from her skin, wrapping the battlefield in waves of green and silver. Plasma fire bent aside, blades shattered in her grasp. She struck with hands that glowed like suns, scattering raiders as if they were shadows before dawn. The colonists fought beside them, emboldened. Farmers wielded mining drills like spears. Traders hurled grenades from rooftops. Children carried water to the wounded. For the first time, the colony did not mock. It stood. But the marauders were endless. For every skiff they destroyed, another descended. For every beast slain, 2 more tore through the gates. The leader returned, clad in black armor reforged, his voice thundering across the battlefield. "Exile, human dog, tonight you both die, and your colony burns." He charged, blade burning hotter than before, a weapon stolen from forgotten wars. Ryland stepped forward, but Serenia caught his arm, fire spilling from her skin. "This is mine," she said. Ryland met her eyes. He wanted to argue, to shield her, but the bond between them pulsed stronger than words. He nodded once, then turned to hold the line while she faced the giant alone. The duel shook the ground. His blade carved arcs of molten air. Her fire met each strike, hands blazing, body burning with light that seared the night. They clashed in the heart of the colony, power colliding in explosions that rattled stone and bone alike. The colonists watched in awe and terror as Serenia stood against the monster who had raised entire worlds. She staggered, faltered, yet rose again, every breath a refusal to break. At last, the raider leader struck a blow that hurled her to the ground. He loomed above, blade raised high. Ryland cried out, breaking through the melee, his rifle empty but his will unshaken. He threw himself forward, unarmed, between the blade and the woman he had chosen. The strike fell, and the fire erupted. Serenia rose, her body blazing brighter than ever before, the bond with Ryland igniting a surge that tore through her veins. The blades struck her skin and shattered into shards of molten light. The leader roared, blinded as her fire consumed him. She pressed her hands to his chest, and with a cry that split the night, unleashed everything. The explosion lit the skies for miles. Raiders screamed as their leader was reduced to ash, their skiffs shattering, beasts collapsing. The survivors fled in panic, their fear greater than their hunger for conquest. The skyborn marauders were broken. When the light faded, Serenia collapsed. Rylan caught her before she struck the ground, holding her trembling body against his chest. Her glow dimmed, her breath shallow, but her eyes opened to meet his. "You would have died," she whispered. "And so would you," he answered. He smiled faintly. "Then perhaps we would have died together." "Not tonight," he said firmly, pulling her close. "Not tonight." The colony stood silent. They had seen the exile save them once, but now she had given everything, burning brighter than any of them could comprehend. And the man they mocked had stood with her, unflinching. One by one they bowed their heads. Not in worship, not in pity, but in respect. When dawn broke, the smoke cleared to reveal ruins. Homes shattered, fields burned. But the colony lived. And it lived because of them. The elders approached, shame heavy in their eyes. "We were wrong," one admitted. "Without her, we are nothing." Rylan's gaze was cold. "You will remember that, but she is not yours to claim." She never was. That night, Rylan and Serenia left the colony behind. They walked into the mountains where alien stars burned brighter, and the wind carried no whispers of mockery. At the summit of a ridge, they built their shelter, a fortress carved into stone, a place where no voice but their own could define them. Under the mountain of stars, Serenia's fire glowed soft against the rock walls, lighting the future they would shape together. She rested against Rylan, her mask discarded, her fear finally quiet. "They called me exile," she murmured. "They called me mad," he answered. "And now?" He looked at her, the alien woman who had been mocked, who had burned brighter than any sun he had seen. His voice was steady, certain. "Now they will remember us as the ones who chose each other when no one else would. The ones who stood when everyone else broke. The ones who turned mockery into fire." She closed her eyes, a faint smile touching her lips. "Then let them remember." The stars stretched endless above them, and for the first time, Serenia believed they were not cruel, not cold. For the first time, she believed they were meant for her. And beneath those stars, in the quiet of the mountain, two outcasts became something greater than all who had scorned them. Not exile, not disgrace, but the fire no darkness could ever extinguish.